All right, let's get right into it. Something pretty wild is brewing way up north. We're talking about a full-on diplomatic crisis over a giant island of ice and rock. The United States has suddenly made this incredibly aggressive move to get Greenland, and honestly, the rest of the world is just watching, trying to figure out what happens next.
I mean, listen to this. The message coming out of the White House could not be more blunt. This isn't some polite diplomatic request. This is a demand, and it's being framed as a matter of urgent national security. The tone is confrontational, and that seems to be completely intentional.
And what about the response from Greenland? Well, it's just as strong, just as clear. A completely defiant rejection of any foreign claim. They're basically saying, thanks, but no thanks. This is our home. So right away, the lines are drawn. And it's setting up this incredible standoff between supposed allies.
So this is the big question, right? What on earth is so valuable about Greenland that the United States would be willing to risk blowing up its relationship with its allies and maybe even fracturing NATO itself? Let's dig in.
Yeah, this has gone way beyond just some tough talk between leaders. We are now in a full-blown diplomatic crisis. There are official statements flying back and forth, actual laws being proposed, and even military posturing from all sides.
And when you look at how the U.S. is playing this, it's a full-court press. The White House is on the record saying they won't rule out military force, the Secretary of State is backing that up, and over in Congress, a lawmaker has actually introduced a bill to just annex Greenland and make it the 51st state. It's a very coordinated, very intense pressure campaign.
The stakes here are, well, about as high as they can get. The Danish Prime Minister is putting it in the starkest terms imaginable. An attack on Greenland, which is officially part of the Kingdom of Denmark, isn't just a small conflict. It's an act that he says could literally bring the entire NATO alliance crashing down.
And it's not just Denmark pushing back. The reaction from across Europe has been incredibly fast and, more importantly, unified. You've got all the major European powers, France, Germany, the UK, plus the EU itself, all putting out statements saying, nope, we stand with Greenland, we stand with Denmark. So to really understand the why behind this whole crisis, we've got to look beneath Greenland's enormous ice sheet. Because buried under all that ice is an absolute treasure trove of resources. Just look at this number for a second, 31 billion. That's the estimated number of barrels of oil equivalent just in northeast Greenland alone. To put that in perspective for you, that's about the same as all the proven crude oil reserves in the entire United States. It's a staggering amount of energy.
But it's not even really about the oil. It gets even crazier when you look at the minerals. The US government has a list of 34 minerals that it considers critical for the economy and for national security. Well, guess what? 25 of them are found in Greenland. It's like a strategic one-stop shop for everything you need to build modern technology.
And we're talking about some seriously important stuff here, rare earth elements like dysprosium and neodymium. The deposits in Greenland might be big enough to supply over a quarter of the entire planet's future demand for things like electric vehicle motors and wind turbines. So, Greenland is basically at the dead center of the green energy transition. And that brings us to the real geopolitical core of this issue. America's sudden urgency isn't just about getting these resources for itself. It's about breaking another global superpower's chokehold on them. And that superpower is, of course, China. Just look at this chart. It's so simple, but it explains so much of the panic. China doesn't just dig these rare earth minerals out of the ground, it refines almost 90% of the world's supply. That gives Beijing a massive strategic advantage and control over the materials that literally every advanced economy needs.
So how did we even get into this mess? Well, for decades, Western countries were pretty happy to let someone else handle the dirty, expensive, and frankly hazardous business of mining and processing these elements. So they outsourced it to China. And what was the result? China built up the expertise, invested in the technology, and now they hold all the cards.
And you better believe China knows the power it holds. They can, and do, use export controls on these materials. And since this stuff is crucial for everything from your smartphone to an F-35 fighter jet, Beijing can use this leverage to protect its own industries and put immense pressure on its rivals. It's a huge tool in their geopolitical toolbox.
Now, if this whole Greenland plan sounds completely radical and out of nowhere, you have to remember the US has played this long game before. And to understand it, we need to look back at another American land purchase that at the time everyone thought was a huge mistake.
Let's go back to 1867. The US buys Alaska from Russia, and people mock it. They call it Seward's Folly, a useless frozen wasteland. But then, gold is discovered. And then decades later, massive oil reserves are found. And during the Cold War, it becomes this incredibly valuable strategic fortress. The thing everyone laughed at turned out to be priceless.
Let's just put some numbers to that. A $7.2 million purchase for what they called a walrus-covered icebox has now turned into a state with a $55 billion a year GDP and a military value you just can't put a price on. The bet in Washington is that Greenland is the next Alaska.
And believe it or not, this isn't the first time the US has tried to get Greenland. It's almost a century-and-a-half-old obsession. The idea came up right after the Alaska Purchase. They tried to do a territory swap in 1910. President Truman offered $100 million in gold back in 1946. What's different this time isn't the desire. It's the aggressive, threatening tactics.
Okay, so let's snap back to today, because this historical context is having very real, very messy consequences right now. This aggressive move is creating deep cracks, not just in the NATO alliance, but inside American politics too.
This is something you almost never see. A small, but very symbolic, joint European military force has actually deployed to Greenland. Now, it's not big enough to fight a war, but that's not the point. The political message is unmistakable. European boots are on the ground. Any attack on Greenland is now an attack on them, too.
And this whole thing is causing a huge fight back in Washington. You've got these competing bills being introduced in Congress. One is literally called the Greenland Annexation and Statehood Act. And right against it, you have the Greenland Sovereignty Protection Act, which would block any government money from being used to buy the island. It just shows how deeply divided even the US government is on this.
So when you zoom out, you see this isn't really just about Greenland. This whole crisis is about the future of the entire Arctic. It's a test of international law, and it's a test of the right of people to decide their own future in a world that is changing incredibly fast.
And that really leaves us with a big, unsettling question, doesn't it? As the ice up north continues to melt and the big global powers start jockeying for position, are the old rules of sovereignty going to hold up? Or are we stepping into a new era where the map of the world is once again up for grabs?